So, welcome to the next video in this series on the indoor environments. In this video we're going to start to focus on the flooring. Okay, so what we're going to do is I want you to load up your walls that you have made from the previous tutorial. And what we're going to do is create a new scene. We're going to go File, we're going to go New, and I'm going to rename mine Floor 2, just purely because I've already made one set. So yours should just be floor, and the width is going to be 128 by 128, I think. Yeah, we'll go 128, 128. We'll see how that looks. Okay, so cool. Now what we're going to do is just copy these over. So just push Control. Forget Select tool, go to Marquee tool, push Control C. Control V, and we'll do the same on the left side. Control C, Control V. We'll just quickly rename those and we'll place them at the top of the scene where they're going to form on the actual map itself. Make sure that's okay. And we'll go, so this is wall left, wall right, create a new folder, and we'll put them both in there. Oh. We'll rename that walls, and we'll create a new folder. We'll rename this floor, and we'll create a new layer in there. We'll call that floor. Okay, so what we wanted to do is actually build the shape of the room using what we already know about how we're going to tile it. So to keep things easier and simple, we're going to follow the same size as these. It makes sense, they'll be able to fit in nicely underneath, and when you actually build your games together you'll be able to just copy and keep repeating them and keeping them seamless again. So the difference here is obviously we could have our floorboards running down this way. Okay, there's nothing stopping us doing that at all. Okay, so if you really want to have some really long wooden tiles, wooden beams running that way, then absolutely go for it. In this video I'm going to do left to right, right to left, either way, and we're going to do it slightly different to how we've done these. Okay, and this is because of the angle that we're working on. So what we're going to do is just go to fix size. We're going to have the width at 64 and we're going to have the height at 32, and we're just going to go in and we're just going to go to, with our colour picker, we're just going to select that lighter colour in the middle. Okay, try to pick one right in the middle where we haven't used the brush. Okay, otherwise we might pick up a different tone. And we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go fill, and we're going to fill it in with the foreground colour. Okay, so a couple of things that we need to be aware of. Firstly, once we start drawing across, okay, if we start painting that in, it's going to look like we're looking directly down from a complete bird's eye view, but we're not doing that. As with the buildings and everything else, we're doing this at a perspective that actually shows us like the front and reveals a bit of the top. Okay, two perspective points. We need to follow that tone here, follow this here. Now we're going to do a little trick with the shading to give the impression that we are actually looking from above. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our brush and we'll paint shadow. Okay, now I like to give the impression that these floorboards are all bending inwards. Okay, but what we're going to do is shade these in like this, keeping the shadow slightly heavier or thicker on the bottom side. Okay, and actually because it gives the impression that we're looking across the object, and once we add the shadow, the darker shades, cancel that, Alt X I think it is, if you're going to brush, Alt X, yeah, no sorry, Shift X, sorry, changes the colour. So yeah, again once we start adding that shadow in, you know, it will give the impression that we are actually looking slightly across. If I just get the eraser, actually take this back a little bit, okay, you know, it's only ever so subtle, but it will give the impression that we're actually looking across the object rather than looking straight down. Okay, and that's the impression that we need to replicate on here. So what we're going to do is, now we have our area covered, I think we need to make two considerations. The fact that we want to duplicate this, that we may want to duplicate that, and so the bottom and the top need to match. Secondly, these sides need to. And the one way that I sort of developed a trick for that is to paint a actual gap between the floorboards as though there's a bit of space between them. Okay. And secondly, we won't do this side because we don't want a giant gap. We just need one little gap, so we have it on one side. Secondly, was to start to plot out the width. Okay, so I think about 5 or 6 pixels is enough. Maybe even a little bit less. Okay. Now, obviously, we know that we want the top and the bottom to match. So let's just go back, paint over those. So I'm using Alt to pick the colour, dabber when I'm on pencil mode, and I'm just working through those as a way of erasing, working on the same surface. So again, we're just going to delete those, and we're just going to work in a couple more. Okay, cool. So I'm kind of happy with that. And then what we want to do is, again, on this side, just recreate those. Okay, get them roughly around the same point. Just gives us a little bit more control in this early stage. And we're going to plot this one down around here, and again this one here. Now, what we want to do, again, to aid this fact that these floorboards are bending in, is to drop them slightly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to connect these two lines up. I think I've done that on the wrong one there. Okay, so I think we're 3 down. There we go. Nope, we are 4 down. Sorry. So again, don't worry if you make a mistake. We can just paint over it because we're working on that same layer. Okay, so don't worry too much. Okay, and again with this, I mean, honestly, don't get too precious with it. We can just erase stuff, and we're going to paint over these as well in a second. And again, what you'll find is, like I spoke about in the previous video, these will start to look really, really manufactured. Look it's a brand new building, which again loses that illusion that we're going for. Okay. So again, if you get really impatient, you can just really plow across, and we can rework these in. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is start thinking about making them look more natural. Okay, so what we want to do is drop them down and make them bending into the ground. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is start to paint these bends in. Okay, so again, whenever something drops, something from above will most presumably drop as well. Okay, we can sort of make some feel a little bit more than others. We'll see how it goes, but again, don't have them all starting and ending in the same point, because it will only make it feel really generic and repetitive. Once you have the repetitive pattern, it distracts the audience, it will distract the people playing your game. So what we're going to do here is just start to paint these back out, and just to sort of conceal them a little bit. Okay, so we're getting that sort of little bit of offset now. Okay, cool. So we've got our sort of bends. I mean, that one there is a little bit more than the others, which might be a little bit distracting, but I don't think so. And actually, what we can do is actually increase that on this top piece as well, I think, just to not upset the harmony. Yeah, I think that works. And actually, you know what, let's take a look off the original floor. I might actually go for one that's, no, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. Okay, we're just going to go, I was going to say I might go for a more dramatic one, but I think we might leave it there. We might have to tidy it up in a bit. We'll see how it goes. So we've got that, we've got our other points marked out, and obviously that's our really dark piece. We want to save this to the very end. We don't want to kind of upset the flow here. Now what we need is actually two more lighter colours. So if you did create any other assets like the bridge, you may want to borrow off those. So I'm going to take this as our very brightest. Okay, so I'm going to paint that on. Now obviously that is really bright, so what we're going to do is get a colour picker, and we're just going to see where about we are between these two. Okay, so we need something that's around here to ease that in. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do is just take this, I'm going to paint that down here just so we've got these two colours. Okay, and then we'll just take our darkest. We probably won't use the darkest much, but we'll just keep it just in case. Now with this, what we're going to do is start to paint the centre parts, okay, in here. So what's really important is we don't take too much of the shadow from either of the sides, because what's going to happen is these floors are going to drop, they're going to reflect a lot of light, but these corner bits where, say we've got the floorboard, say this is our floorboard, the middle bit's going to sort of sink in. It's going to reflect a lot of the light back out. These corner pieces, as it curves around, will be in shade, okay, and sort of the light will bounce back off this centre part. Is what we're going for. Now it's not 100% accurate, okay, but that's the way we're going to do it. So we have to sort of keep that in mind if we want it to make it look like it's 3D. And obviously we're going to have heavier shadow on the bottom, so don't worry too much if we go over. We are going to paint these back in. Just be careful on this side. Obviously we need this to blend in to our top, but we're going to do that at the very end once we've already copied this over, okay, once we make this as our top left corner. So at this stage I don't want you to worry about whether these two ends won't match, because they are going to match at this stage. We're going to offset this later. So okay, we can paint these in, and it shouldn't take too long. We can just get that fit. I mean, don't worry if you miss little bits. I mean, it adds to the texture of the wood and the surface, okay. You know, so it's sort of doing a bit of the job for us. So what we're going to sort of do later on. Remember to regularly take off your brush, because you don't want to have to undo everything. Okay. So again, I'm just going to scroll through. So let's see how that looks. Cool. Okay. So just going to paint that over there. So what we're going to do is with these, we're just going to start to paint just a little bit more detail, and I think around these parts here. Obviously again around this part here. Okay, just want to take that back a little bit. Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to offset one of these sides. So here, where this floorboard ends, we're going to take this over to this side, and actually this should break it up a little bit. Okay. You can do one. You might want to do two. Not necessarily together. But that should break it up a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this point, and we're going to paint in the actual edges of the. We're going to have to zoom in. The edges of the floorboards here, where that light is sort of really reflecting off. Okay. So at the very corners, you know, this is really gonna be sort of reflecting back out. Okay. We don't want to go across on here, so it's going to connect to this part. And what we're going to do is just start to bring some of these top bits back in. Just add a little bit more shadow. Okay, cool. So just take a look at my original one. Yeah, so we added some textures in. Okay, cool. So we're just going to cover this line up here. We just want to sort of make sure there's a little bit of shadow on these edges. Okay, and yeah, there we go. So what we're going to do now is actually, in fact we can take this one down a little bit, is start to paint some texture in. So this is where we're going to get a bit more jagged here. What I want you to do is just sort of go up and down on the wood and create this sort of barky like texture. Okay. Now in the other one I did quite straight lines in little sections like this to get just a couple of bits of the flow. But in this one I really want you to sort of, you know, push up that texture. Okay. And very quickly going to end up with a really sort of textured surface. Okay, so again like that, it's not as dark as the wall, but obviously we don't want it to be, because you know this needs to you know, stand off that. Okay, so just going to do a couple of bits with this colour, just off the top where that sort of, oh, it should be hitting off most. I want to do a couple of bits on the inside of these as well. Bring that out. Cool. And then what we're going to do is take the dark, in fact not the dark, like this one, and what we're going to do is actually just do some bits in the shadow. Okay, just to make sure that it fits in quite nicely. And then what we're going to do is just on some of these actually take the corners of the actual theme itself in. Okay, to make it feel like it's dropping in rather than just take it back as well. Yeah. Okay, and we're going to do the same on this side. Oh, sorry, it's my touchpad. Don't do that to me. There we go. And we're going to take these corners in just to give it a little bit more of openness. And what we're going to do, one final little touch, what I did on the other one as well, is actually add in the nails where they'd sort of been tapped in. So I did a sort of a really light grey. I did 2 squares. In different spots, they weren't exactly lined up. I need to keep this as looking as organic and as handmade and handcrafted as possible. And then I've did one that was a little bit lighter than that, I think. Or we can go darker, we'll go darker. And yeah, there we go. Yeah. And then, there we go. So what we just want to check now is that we just want to sort of delete this down here. We have all the colours on the scene, so if we want to get them back we can just pick them from there. So it's a different way of working and having a defined layer with the different colours on. So cool, I'm happy with that. So let's see how this duplicates next to each other. Okay, cool, and yeah, I think that works quite well. And then obviously next to each other. Cool. With that shadow and that light we end up with a really, really big sort of separation between them. We may need to touch the light up on these sides. Okay. Just to sort of separate them out. Now the one thing that I really like about this is we're not actually noticing those patterns repeating too much. But just to be on the safe side, what we're going to do is throw the copy, and we're actually just going to re-change the actual details on these. Okay, so we're just going to paint some of this dark bit back in, okay, on all of them. Maybe just change some of these little bits of lines a little bit as well, and we are literally just going to paint back on top of it, okay, just to separate it up, just to make it that little bit different. And then we're going to take this bit, just taking these parts back away. Oh. And then we're just going to paint those top lines on again, just to get that consistency. And once those are on, we're just going to fill in the texture again. Okay. Really, really quick and simple, especially if you've got a graphics tablet, which is what I really recommend you do. So just tap in the sides, really, really quick. Okay, so it's broken it up, and then what we're going to do is actually add some of the lighting that we have here. So some of these. Okay, so yeah, cool. And then what we're going to do is just bring some of this back down. Oh. We're going to repaint the nails back on as well, don't worry. We're just going to add a few more bits onto these. Just be careful we don't go over any of the key lines. But, I mean, if we do, it's not the end of the world. And then we're just going to add these where we've taken bits away. Cool, so we've got two variations on that, and what we're going to do is call these floor middle left, and we're going to call this one floor middle right. And then we're going to duplicate these, drag them down to that new layer panel, and we're going to drag the originals to the bottom, and we're going to take the copies right up. Now we need to blend these in with this surface here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lock the right and hide it, just so we don't paint over it. What we're going to do is take the shadow piece and actually this tree piece here, and we're just going to paint this on the top, okay, and actually bring this into our floorboard, on top of our floorboards, and this will then forever match up with our tree. Okay, actually at this point down here we can start to add a couple of pixels on, maybe make it lighter, maybe a couple of bits on there. In fact, we don't want to draw on top of the wall, so let's just take that back a little bit. There we go. Okay, cool. So in fact what we're going to do is just turn the wall down a little bit, about 5%, just so we can see where we've gone over. So we have a little bit look. Oh, make sure we're on the right layer. Don't know if you're deleting that. And yeah, there we go. Okay, so what we need to do is actually make this and do what we're going to do here. Actually just bring this wall down. We're just going to add this shadow on. And obviously just bring this along the front. Now what we're going to do is that we don't want it to be completely straight, so we're going to actually just paint some of the little bits just to break it up. Okay. You want it to blend out, we don't want it to just be free but rows of different colours. It needs to look a little bit offset so it looks a little bit more natural. And if we just take this back up to 100, almost there, we just got to go a little bit darker, I think, a little bit further into it. So again we can select this and we can bring some of these, providing we're on the right layer. We'll take that, so just go to undo, we'll take that to about 98, go back up to our left floor copy, and we're just going to bring some of these down. I've done it again, I've gone over it, so frustrating sometimes, but you know, I'll live, even if it is slightly annoying. We'll just get our eraser, we'll bring that down. Okay, and yeah, what we're going to do is just paint this tree here into the scene as well. So I'm just going to bring that down, we're going to get the lighter colour, bring it in. And I'm going to get that brown again, I'm just going to take that up. And hopefully that will just make it feel a little bit more natural. Cool, so let's turn the opacity back up on this. Let's just delete this little piece here. Let's turn our wall back on, zoom out a little bit. Yeah, it still needs more shadow around this area, so what we're going to do is get our brush tool, get our darker colour, and we are literally just not on the wall layer, make sure we're on this layer, and we are just going to paint the shadow in. Okay, so obviously just want to make sure we're not going onto that, and then by using this brush it should, we don't want to go over the tree part, just be careful of that. So hopefully now by doing that we have a bit of a nicer blend. Okay, so I still need to do some little bits over here, should bring that out. Which, you know, is fine. So I just going to select this layer by pushing Control and clicking on the image, just so I don't paint over the top of this. Okay, make that brush a little bit bigger. Again, if we do too big, we do end up with a lot of varying parts, and then that illusion will, you know, shatter basically. So we do want to try and be careful with how much we use it. So by comparison, if I turn the other piece on now, you can see that, yeah, you know, it really stands out. So what we're going to do is do the same on the other side. We bring the middle back in, our middle lines up quite nicely. Okay, by comparison. Now as you'll see on my other ones, I've been a lot lighter with it, okay? On these ones we have been a lot darker. It's entirely up to you which way you go. I was more subtle there, so this is going to be my sort of darker hut. Maybe these parts are a little bit too light, so I might make them all darker, okay? But it's up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the left hand side, and do the same for the bottom corners where I've just painted in the shadow down the bottom, okay? So I want you to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to demonstrate it here because I've demonstrated all that we need to sort of know, but obviously once we've done that we can rename the layers. So we would have top, floor, top left, middle left, bottom left, top right, middle right, bottom right, and we're about to copy them in to your sprite sheet, and they'll fit together like this quite nicely, okay? So yeah, what I'd like you to do is go ahead, complete those, copy them in, and I will see you in the next tutorial where we start looking at how we're going to add individual objects to the scene, okay? So I will see you there. Thanks.